pre-brief about, so you're out of the hospital, you're trying to figure out life, you're trying to figure out how to adapt and what's the new norm. And you shared an event that happened in the store, and I would love for you to share that story with us.
So when I first got home from losing both arms, obviously, I was trying to figure out life again. And at the time, I had two daughters. My oldest was Billy Grace. She was 21 months old. And my youngest was Campbell. And Campbell was 3 months old at this time. And so anyway, our first trip to Owensboro, Kentucky, which is where I live, my wife wanted to go to Hobby Lobby. So we decided to go to this Hobby Lobby, and I cannot stand to shop. So I told her, I said, well, I'll take Billy Grace because she's 21 months old. She can walk. I could hold her at the time, but Campbell was still in a car seat. So she was just going to ride in the shopping cart. And so I told Jenny, I said, you take Campbell, I'll take Billy. We're just going to walk around and do whatever. When you're ready to go home, we'll go. So I was actually holding Billy in my nubs, is what I call it. I didn't have prosthetics at the time. So I had Billy Grace in my arm, and we were walking down an aisle, and she started kicking her feet. And, I was about to drop her. So I set her down on the ground real quick, and I said, Billy Grace, what are you doing? And she just had this big smile and went running away from me. And so I yelled at her, and I said, Billy Grace, get back over here. And nobody was on this aisle but me and her. And she was at the end of it at the time, and she turned around. She had this big smile on her face. And I tell people, when you watch a movie and everything's like slow motion and you got this little girl that's running to you to give you this big hug, kiss, and, as a father, it's like the best feeling in the world that you got this little girl that loves you. And so she's running towards me in slow motion, and I got my arms or my nubs, kind of out, ready for her to jump in my arms. And she gets to me and she grabs me by my pants and she pulls my pants down to my ankles. So at that time, I'm like, oh crap, I can't pull them up. I couldn't put my own clothes on at the time. And I'm like, Billy Grace, you got to pull my pants up. You got to pull my pants up. She ain't having it. So I'm like, crap, what do I do? It's like, I got to find Jenny, which I didn't know where she was. So I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to walk to the outside aisle because there won't be as many people probably. So I wobble as fast as I can, which I got pants down to my ankles. And I get to the very end, and I turn to the right, and I walk and walk and walk. And like 3 or 4 rows back, I finally see Jenny, and I'm like, Jenny, you got to pull my pants up. She turns around, and she's like, oh, my gosh, this is so embarrassing. I'm like, yeah, it's embarrassing. I just lost my pants in the middle of Hobby Lobby. So she pulls my pants up, and I tell her what happened, and she's like, that is awful. And I was like, it could have been worse. And she was like, how can it be worse? Like, you lost your pants in the middle of Hobby Lobby. I said, well, at least my underwear stayed up.
Oh my gosh. When you told us that story, and even now I'm like, tears are running down my face. That is absolutely crazy. Well, we appreciate you sharing that. And I know the participants are going to love that. And, Jason, one of the things that stood out before we get into your story was your attitude is unbelievable. And I can't wait to unpack really a lot of that. But before we dive into that, will you kind of share a little bit about your experience growing up? Because you have an incredible family unit, and just kind of walk us through what it was like growing up. Who were some of the influences that really helped shape you into the man that you are today?
Yeah. So I'm from Owensboro, Kentucky. Actually, I live in Utica, Kentucky, which is just right outside of Owensboro. I'm probably about 7 or 8 miles from town, in the county. And where I grew up, it was my mom and dad's house. My dad built this house in 1980. And then right next door to my house is my uncle, which I had a cousin that's my age that lived there. Right next door to him is my grandfather, which is my mom's dad. Right next to him is my other uncle, which I have a cousin that's a year older than us. And then around my house, my grandfather and them farm about 2,300 acres of corn and soybeans. So we have a lot of area to run around, ride four-wheelers, just be able to kind of do what we wanted as kids, and growing up, I always had this thought that, one of these days I'm gonna buy my mom and dad's house, and my cousin's gonna move back out here, my other cousin, and we're gonna raise our kids the same way we were raised up. And everybody in my neighborhood has been here my entire life. So once people move out here, they stay here. It says a lot about the neighborhood. Everybody takes care of each other, and if you see somebody that's in a bind doing something across the street, you go over and help. You don't expect money or whatever. You just kind of do that for everybody. And but my dad, he was raised up pretty poor. As my dad, I got 3 uncles and an aunt. So his brothers and sisters, and my grandfather, Papa Koger, and my grandmother never owned their own house. They were raised really poor. My dad's been a self-provider since he was about the age of 14, working in tobacco patches and literally driving, before he was 16 years old, he'd drive to work and all that kind of stuff. And then my dad joined the Army, and he became a drill sergeant in the Army. And so my dad's always been that person that you cannot tell him he couldn't do something, because he's going to show you can. He worked extremely hard at everything he did. He would set goals, and he would make sure he reached those goals. And I really didn't realize any of that until, until adulthood. I never noticed that my dad had all these plans. And so my dad started a construction company in 1984. He had $1,500 to his name. That's all he had. And was very successful. And he was very successful for many reasons. He set a goal, and he's definitely a hard worker. And he always told people what he would do, and he would never back down from his word. Nowadays it kind of can get you in a bind if you don't have a signed contract with somebody. But my dad would shake your hand, and if he told you he's going to do something, I don't care if it cost him money or not, he did it. Like, that's just the way he was raised. And obviously all that has helped me be who I am today. And I think back when I was a kid, I would have never imagined that I would have gone through what I've gone through. And I would have never imagined how could a person get through what I've gone through. But now that I've done that, it makes me go back to my early age and understand that everything that my parents have taught me and the way they lived their life has definitely molded me into the person I am today. And, I hear people say that I'm inspiring, that I'm strong, that people couldn't do what I've done. All I did was I made a decision that I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be a successful amputee. I wanted to be able to do everything I wanted to do before. I wanted to be the same dad I was. I didn't want an accident or losing my arms define who I was.
If you like this episode, check out the full podcast right here. If you want to see more videos, you need to check out right here. Remember, the most important person you're ever going to lead is you.